Okay, so today we're going to be diving into something pretty big.
Yeah.
Kind of looking at this whole question of how AI might really change the game when it comes to jobs and just, our day-to-day lives.
Right. Yeah.
And we've got this fascinating discussion to pull from, featuring a programmer named S. Vishnumurthy
Okay.
and also S. Vasundara.
Interesting.
And the cool thing about their conversation is they're really approaching it. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, let's think through this together.
Yeah.
So they even say like, hey, take this with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
These aren't necessarily the, absolute truths about the future,
Right.
but it's definitely a good starting point to think about all this stuff.
Yeah.
So our goal in this deep dive is to sort of unpack what they had to say
Okay.
and see what kind of picture we can get about how AI could really change
Yeah.
the employment landscape. I mean, who knows? Maybe some of us are going to be out of jobs
Right.
in a few years, but
Well, that's a cheerful thought
yeah,
to start off with.
we'll see.
Yeah.
But one thing they do touch on right away is how AI is already proving to be a pretty amazing tool in certain fields.
Yeah, I think what's striking is how they talk about it in these really practical terms, like right now, not some far off future.
Yeah.
And for Vishnumurthy, especially being a programmer himself,
Yeah.
he's like right in the thick of it. And he gives this great example
Okay.
about just how much AI is changing things for him.
Yeah.
He talks about how even writing something like 10 lines of code
Yeah.
used to be this whole thing. You'd have to look up all the syntax and make sure there weren't any errors.
Yeah. Debugging and all that.
Exactly. Like it was a
Yeah.
whole process.
Yeah.
But now he's saying tools like ChatGPT and Grok and DeepSeek.
Wow. Yeah. Those are the ones.
They can often just spit out that entire chunk of code, like you give it a prompt and
right.
it's pretty much there.
That's crazy.
Sometimes needs a little tweaking, but he estimates that's like an 80% boost in efficiency
80%.
for programmers.
That's huge.
Yeah, it's a pretty massive shift in how they work.
Yeah. It's like going from, writing everything out by hand to having a word processor.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's not just coding, though.
Yeah.
They also talk about how AI is changing the game when it comes to just basic communication.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like if you think about grammar correction, for example,
Oh, yeah. Right.
AI is already making things so much easier.
Okay.
In the past, if you had a long document,
Right.
like a report or a book, you'd have to go through multiple rounds of human editing.
Right. Which could take forever.
Exactly.
And cost a ton of money.
And be expensive.
Yeah.
And there's always that element of subjectivity too, right?
Yeah.
Like an editor might change something.
Yeah.
And it's not quite what you meant.
Yeah, totally.
But AI can just zip through and fix the grammar
Wow.
across all kinds of media,
Yeah.
text, audio transcripts, even video subtitles. So communication becomes more efficient, but also potentially more accurate in terms of preserving the original meaning.
Wow. So it's like AI is this super helpful assistant right now, but then they start talking about something else that's a little more, a little less cheery.
Yeah, a little more unsettling maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
The idea that AI might not just assist us, but actually replace us.
Oh, yeah, the whole job displacement thing.
Yeah.
And they get really specific about what kind of jobs might be on the chopping block.
Yeah, they lay out a pretty wide range of sectors that could be disrupted.
Okay, like what?
Well, for one thing, they talk about call centers.
Oh, yeah.
Especially the ones that deal with kind of routine tasks, like sending out insurance reminders or something.
Right.
AI can make those calls,
Yeah.
handle basic interactions, even explain information pretty effectively.
Oh.
So, a lot of those call center jobs could potentially disappear.
Okay, so that makes sense. I guess those are pretty repetitive tasks.
Right.
But then they talk about programming.
Yeah, and this is where it hits home a bit.
For Vishnumurthy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they estimate that AI could impact like 60 to 70% of programmer roles.
60 to 70%.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a massive number.
Yeah, that's a whole field potentially being reshaped.
Yeah, it's not just about automating the little things anymore.
Yeah. So there's being a programmer isn't going to be the safe bet it used to be.
Right.
Okay, so what other jobs did they mention?
Well, they talk about editors and drafters.
Okay.
People whose jobs are really about working with language.
Right.
Those are seen as being vulnerable. And then photo editing and Photoshop work.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
AI is getting really good at that stuff.
Yeah.
And then even some creative fields like music composition.
Wow, really?
And video creation.
Huh.
AI can generate tunes and videos from text prompts now.
Wow.
It's pretty wild.
Yeah, that is wild. So it's like no job is safe.
Well, they also mentioned security guards doing surveillance.
Oh, proofreaders, even singers.
Stingers.
in certain contexts, like, generating background vocals for songs. Right. And then they even touch on marketing and advertising, sales, and even some management roles.
Wow. So there's a pretty broad impact potentially across the whole economy.
Yeah, seems like it.
Okay, so what is it about AI that makes it capable of doing all these different things?
Well, they talk about how it all comes down to these things called artificial neural networks and how these networks are trained.
Okay, so break that down for me like I'm 5.
Okay, so basically they're designed to mimic how the human brain learns and processes information.
Okay.
They're trained on huge amounts of data, which allows them to see these complex patterns and make connections and then generate outputs that can look a lot like human intelligence.
It's like machine learning.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
The AI learns from all this data and keeps getting better and better at doing specific tasks.
So, like, how do these neural networks actually work? Like, what are they made of?
Well, think of it like a bunch of interconnected nodes, kind of like the neurons in our brains.
Oh, wait.
And the connections between these nodes are adjusted during the training process to improve performance.
I see.
So it's all about fine-tuning those connections.
So AI is learning and improving, like, all the time?
Yeah, all the time at an incredible pace.
Okay, so, but then they talk about something else that's really interesting.
What's that?
This idea that AI might have some fundamental advantages over us humans.
Oh, yeah, that part gets pretty mind-bending.
Yeah, it's like we're comparing 2 different kinds of intelligence with totally different strengths.
Right.
So what are some of the key advantages they talk about?
Well, one big one is immortality.
Immortality.
Humans, we have a limited lifespan.
Yeah, obviously.
Which means there's a limit to how much we can learn and experience.
Yeah, I mean, there's only so much time in a day.
Right, and they use the example of Einstein.
Okay.
Imagine if he could have kept going. Yeah.
Like, what kind of breakthroughs could he have made if he didn't have to die?
Right, that's a good point.
But AI doesn't have that limitation.
Yeah.
It can just keep learning and evolving forever.
Wow, so it could theoretically become way smarter than any human.
Potentially, yeah.
Wow.
And then there's this idea of an expandable brain.
Okay, explain that one.
So our brains are pretty complex.
Yeah, 84 billion neurons or something, right?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
But there are trade-offs.
Okay.
Like if you increase the size of individual neurons, you might get more processing power, but less memory, or vice versa.
Okay.
But artificial neural networks don't have those same limitations.
Okay.
They can just keep adding more layers, more nodes, more connections.
So their processing power and memory could just keep growing and growing.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
And then on top of that, there's the sheer speed difference.
Okay.
We react and perceive things in fractions of a second.
Yeah.
AI can process information in milliseconds or even nanoseconds.
That's way fast.
So they can analyze huge amounts of data and make decisions like lightning fast.
Right.
Wow. So that's already a lot to take in.
Yeah.
Continuous learning, a limitless brain super speed.
Yeah.
But there's one more thing they talk about, right?
Yeah, they call it multidimensionality.
Multidimensionality. Okay. Yeah. I'm intrigued.
So as humans, we're kind of limited to one-on-one interactions.
Well, yeah, if I'm talking to you, I can't really be having a deep conversation with someone else at the same time.
Exactly. But AI doesn't have that constraint. A single AI model could interact with millions of users at the same time.
Wow.
And it can process information from countless sources simultaneously.
So they're painting this picture of AI that could become way more intelligent than any human.
Yeah, that seems to be where they're going with it.
Okay, so given all that, like the big question is, what are we going to do if AI starts taking over all these jobs?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question.
And thankfully, they do offer some thoughts on that. They talk about the need to create new kinds of jobs.
Right.
And they use this really helpful analogy.
Oh, yeah, the one with the 100 units of currency.
Yeah, it's a great way to understand how an economy works.
Yeah, so like imagine a person has 100 units of currency and they spend it on different services.
Okay.
Groceries, haircuts, transportation, whatever.
Yeah.
So that money is being distributed among different service providers and that creates this cycle of economic activity.
Okay.
But then AI comes along and starts replacing some of those services.
Okay.
So let's say AI can now provide 5 out of those 10 services.
Okay.
Either for free or super cheap.
Yeah.
Suddenly, those 5 human service providers are out of a job.
So the person still has their money.
Right. They still have those 100 units.
Yeah.
But the demand for those original 5 services is gone.
Okay, so what happens to the other 50 units?
That's the key question.
Yeah. And what about those people who lost their jobs?
Well, the idea is that we need to create new things for people to spend their money on.
Okay, new services, new products.
Yeah.
And these new things need to be things that people are willing to pay for.
Right.
Okay, so it's not just about replacing the old jobs.
No, it's about inventing entirely new ones.
Okay, so how is that supposed to happen?
Well, that's the tricky part.
Yeah.
But they do point out something important.
What's that?
That AI is disrupting things way faster than previous revolutions.
Okay.
Like, think about the invention of the wheel or the printing press. Those took a long time to really change society.
Yeah, that's true.
But AI is mostly virtual.
Yeah, it's software algorithms.
Right. It's not like building factories or railroads.
Right.
So the pace of change is much faster.
Okay, so we need to be thinking about these new jobs, like, right now.
Yeah, basically.
Okay, well, any ideas on what these new jobs might look like?
Oh, well, they do offer some interesting suggestions.
Okay, I'm all ears.
One example is more personalized in-home doctor visits. Oh, okay, so instead of going to a doctor's office,
right,
the doctor comes to you.
Exactly.
And
they could charge more for that convenience and personalized attention.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then another idea is personalized entertainment.
Okay. Like what?
Like singers or musicians performing at small events.
Okay.
Like a housewarming party or something.
Okay.
Creating these unique experiences that AI can't really replicate.
Right. Yeah, AI can write a song.
Yeah.
But it can't capture that live energy.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's about finding those things that are uniquely human.
Right.
That AI can't do.
Yeah, things that are more sensitive to individual needs.
Okay.
And that enrich our lives in ways that go beyond just, basic tasks.
So it's about leveraging our empathy, our creativity, our ability to connect with each other.
Exactly.
Okay, but they also bring up a potential problem with all of this.
What's that?
Wealth concentration.
Oh, yeah. That's a big one.
Yeah, because if AI is so efficient,
it could end up making a few companies and individuals extremely wealthy.
Right, because they're the ones who own and control the AI.
Exactly. And that could disrupt the whole economic system.
Yeah, think of money like blood in a body.
Okay.
And needs to circulate to keep everything healthy.
Okay.
And if AI takes over all the jobs that used to distribute wealth,
yeah,
the money could just get stuck at the top.
Right. Yeah. So creating these new human-centered services isn't just about giving people jobs.
Right.
It's about making sure the wealth keeps flowing.
Exactly. It's about maintaining a healthy economic ecosystem.
Okay, so let's try to sum up some of the key takeaways here.
Okay.
What do we want our listeners to walk away with?
Well, I think the main point is that AI is likely to cause a lot of disruption in the job market.
Yeah, because this is getting so efficient and so cheap.
Right.
Yeah.
But this disruption also creates an opportunity.
Yeah.
An opportunity to create new kinds of jobs.
Jobs that are more focused on people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Jobs that offer personalized and sensitive services.
Right. And these jobs will be crucial, not just for giving people work.
Yeah.
But also for making sure wealth is distributed fairly.
And keeping the economy running smoothly.
Exactly.
So it's really up to us to figure out what those new jobs are going to be.
Right.
To find those things that AI can't do.
Yeah, to leverage our unique human abilities.
Yeah, our creativity, our empathy, our emotional intelligence.
Exactly.
And then make sure that we build an economy that works for everyone.
Right, one that's more equitable and sustainable.
Well, this has been a really thought-provoking conversation.
It has.
It really makes you wonder what the future holds.
Yeah.
Like as AI gets more and more advanced,
yeah,
what kind of new needs and desires are going to emerge?
Right.
Things that we can't even imagine right now.
Exactly.
And how are we going to create value in that kind of world?
Yeah, it's a fascinating question.
It's a big challenge, but it's also an exciting opportunity, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
To really think about what it means to be human.
Yeah.
In a world that's increasingly shaped by AI. It's a good time to be alive.
Yeah, it is definitely a lot to think about.
Definitely.
But hey, that's what we're here for, right?
That's right.
To dive deep and explore these big ideas.
Absolutely.
So thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
My pleasure.
And until next time, keep those brains buzzing.
Keep thinking.